Hi, everyone. I am Işın Önal, Thinking Food Futures co-curator, along with Livia Alexander, who is also here with us. And our curatorial assistant, Shayna Yoshida, is also with us today. On behalf of Residency Unlimited, we are pleased to welcome you to this two-day virtual symposium and exhibition, tackling one of the most urgent questions of our time. How will we feed ourselves given the intensifying challenges of food insecurity and climate change? We all know that the challenges on the table are complex, and in bringing together artists and scientists, environmentalists and chefs, farmers and activists, we hope to generate different forms of speaking and engaging that go beyond isolated conversations in our small clusters of expertise. We invite you to join us over the next 2 days to as many of the events as we have planned and rethink together the future of food by radically reimagining the present. We are especially pleased to kick off our event with dear Defne Koryürek, a woman, a mother, and an activist who lives, cooks, writes, and lectures to inspire the public in search of a dignified exit for humanity. Defne Koryürek has worked as a cook and a butcher in the restaurant business and led the innovation in Istanbul's food culture for 10 years. She left the commercial world in the mid-2000s and turned to public cause. She founded and led the pivotal Slow Food Convivium in Turkey, and she was the Slow Food International Counselor from Turkey till 2016. Koryürek had a weekly column in a national newspaper, hosted 2 television programs on cooking, and one on food ethics, served on the board of Open Society Turkey, and presently is on the advisory board of WWF Turkey. While she continues to write and lecture, Koryürek, alongside with her partner, Vasıf Kortun, is directing a residency program designed to embrace those who work on agriculture, gastronomy, and ecology. So thank you very much. We would like to welcome Defne Koryürek, and we are very excited to join to her workshop. Thank you.
Forgive me for this little trial and error thing, because today when we worked on these with Vasıf, it was quite working, and now I'm having a bit difficulties, but we're set. Hello.
We see it great though, for the moment.
But you also see the numbers, don't you?
No, we don't see it.
No, not very nice. Okay then. Okay, here we go. Mm-hmm. Have you heard the news? While the biomass of wild mammals has fallen by 82%, and natural ecosystems have lost about half their area, and 1 million species are at risk of extinction, the mass of human-produced objects are now likely to overweight all life on Earth. At the start of the 20th century, however, our existence stood at a mere 3%. But since post-World War II, in 60 to 70 years or so, we have managed to produce every week the equivalent of the weight of every person on Earth on average. Please take a look around you. Everything you see, from the buildings we live in to the roads that take us home, from the toilet paper we flush to the oh so lovingly selected tiles of our kitchens, from the dishwashers to the dozens of t-shirts in our closets, from the sneakers we're wearing to the plastic bags we collect under our sinks. They all are part of that mess. This is the mess we've collectively created. The year I was born, the world population was around 3.5 billion. Today, in about 50-some years, we've reached a series 7.7. Of that 7.7, there are around 1 billion people in the world who live with less than $1 a day. And more than half of that 7.7 do not even have $10 a day to spend on food, shelter, education, and health. The year I was born, the cost of a loaf of bread was 22 cents in the US. Today, it is around $1.40. While an estimated 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted globally each year, and over 10 billion tons of concrete are being produced annually, of that 7.7 billion people, 690 million go to bed hungry regularly. And while populations of wild animals have more than halved since the day I was born, and the activities of our kind result in the extinction of up to 150 species every day, it is still considered to be feasible that 1.35 million chickens die every year during transport from the factory farms to the slaughterhouses. While almost 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute around the globe, and while no one is talking about the cost of a single-use toilet paper, it is estimated that unless water use is drastically reduced, severe water shortage will affect the entire planet by 2040. And while an estimated 790 million people, almost 11% of the world's population, live without access to an improved water supply, it costs 4 tons of water to produce a gram of gold. Being green does not help either. The cost of an electric car is also a huge burden when you look at the numbers from my point of view. It takes almost 2 million liters of water to produce 1 ton of lithium. While an estimated 1.8 billion people, almost 25% of the world's population, live without access to adequate sanitation. 200 years ago, there were less than 1 billion people on Earth. Today, we are 7.7. Of that 7.7, only in 2019, an estimated 11 million people fled their homes, almost doubling the total figure over the past decade. Among the overall 79.5 million displaced people globally, 26 million were refugees, 4.2 million asylum seekers, 45.7 million internally displaced people, meaning those who fled to other parts of their own country. People from Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar made up more than 2/3 of the refugee population. Of those, at least 19,759 died crossing the Mediterranean since 2014. Our current population is 7.7 billion. The combined weight of all the plastic, bricks, concrete, and stuff we've made in the world has already outweighed all animals and plants on the planet. Soon will be 9. What is a lot? What is less? What is none? How do we define abundance? Who decides the value of a sardine or a piece of bread? What's in your mouth? Are you fed well? Some say you're stuffed. Do you lack nutrition? Are we done? Can hungry sleep? Hope do you have? What is a lot? What is not? Who decides if it's enough? And who dies? Who survives? Yes, food is nutrition. It makes our body work, grow, and repair itself. Food is security. Ensuring wholesome, nutrient-dense foods has always been our top priority. Food requires a working community. It also creates some. Food that is accessible, affordable, and culturally relevant, while also preserving our finite environmental resources, is not only a utopian idea, it's sustainable. Sustainable is the word that we should focus on. That's our life jacket. Okay, let's see what you have on your table. Today we shall be preparing peksimet. Peksimet is something that my friends over on the Aegean eat almost daily on the islands. I took the peksimet as an example, for I believe the islands, which have finite resources, are today the very example for us. For we have a planet, a dear planet, a beloved one that we've been abusing. So let's look at your table. Let's see if you have everything at hand. Some wheat flour, some barley flour, some yeast, salt, the spices like aniseed and fennel, be it honey, sugar, or molasses, some sort of a sweetener. I'm vegan, so I won't be using honey. Olive oil, some wine, some water. Okay. Since we have limited time, I'm going to ask you to wake the yeast up. Please gather in a small bowl a cup of your wheat flour and half a cup of your water. To that, please add the 2 tablespoons full of instant yeast. Don't be alarmed about the amount of yeast. 2 tablespoons is a lot, I agree. But this is how it's going to be. Okay, so here I had my yeast and I took some of the flour and put them together. And at the end, I have a sludge like this. This isn't very appealing, I know, but please use a small bowl like this and just give it a stir with some water, some flour, some yeast, and some water. Give it a stir, make it a very dense sludge like this, and let it sit. I have something like 10 more minutes of a story to tell you. This is how it's going to look like in 10 to 15 minutes. I hope you're working with me. Now let's put that aside and talk a bit about peksimet. Peksimet is a kind of a rusk that is hard and dry and keeps well. Peksimet most likely passed from the new Greek word paximadia to Turkish. It means a military biscuit that is baked twice. This word is thought to be evolved from the Middle Greek word paxamas or paxamitis. Aglaya will pronounce them far better than I do. Some also argue that the name paximadia comes from the Greek term paximadion, which is derived from Paxamus, a 1st century Greek author who wrote, among many things, a comprehensive cookbook. As far as I know, the word first appeared in the recipe of a laxative biscuit composed by the Greek physician Galen. Peksimet and alike can be made of wheat, barley, rye, corn, or any combination of flours. Basically, one puts together a yeasted dough, bakes it once, takes it out, slices, and returns it to the oven. Keeps it there depending on the season. From 6 to 7 hours up to 12 to dry them. And that's it. Frugality is in their essence. It shouldn't be surprising that even after 6 or 7 months, or a year if they last, that they preserve their zest. And they come in various sizes and shapes. The two most important rusks to me, the Peksimet and the paximadia, come from Bodrum and Greece. Do you see those dots? They're kind of right across each other. The one that is found in Bodrum, the Bodrum Peksimeti, is in extinction. Well, once upon a time, Bodrum was a village, a tiny fisherman's village. Had some fish and sponge to exchange, was not a wealthy corner. And Peksimet was produced to sustain nourishment. It was eaten daily. It was the food of the sponge divers, as well as the fishermen. It was sold to the passing merchants. It created connections, as well as communities. Then in the 70s and 80s, things took an unfortunate turn. As the construction business for summer houses in Bodrum developed, the waters got contaminated and the sponge got sick. The sponge divers had to give up on their trade and their Peksimet lost its importance. Now it's part of the Ark of Taste catalog, thanks to the Slow Food Foundation of Biodiversity and the local convivia that listed it, Slow Food Bodrum. Although the trade is long dead, the last sponge diver of Bodrum is still alive. He tells the stories. Bodrum, now the prominent destination for summer vacations, feels like a small Istanbul in size of commerce. And of course, has all the supermarkets in the world. Any cheese, any wine, wherever it comes from, finds a place on the shelves. It is mainly one restaurant and its chef owner that cares for Peksimet these days. His name is Orhan Dumanlı. If you go to Bodrum, do visit him at Kısmet Restaurant. On the other side though, in Kirit, where paximadia comes from, it's a totally different story. Theirs also have relations to the sailors, merchants, etc. But Kirit is an island surrounded by water. Its resources are finite, like our beloved and most abused planet. I believe the story of the creating paximadia and the conditions it was created needs to be told by Aglaia Cremezi, a woman of great knowledge, master researcher on the food cultures of the Greek islands, a writer, teacher, and a cook, a dear friend, an invaluable mentor. Aglaia is the one behind the recipe I will be using as part of my presentation today. And I'm truly honored for she is with us here tonight. Dear Aglaia, please tell us, why is Crete so famous of its paximadia?
Well, Crete is...
Yours, Aglaia.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, so Crete, in Crete, paximadia survived, but as you said, you can find paximadia all over Greece and especially on the islands. As you said, it lasts a long time. It was the food the sailors took with them in their long voyages because it didn't spoil, so they could have it and use it whenever they wanted. Let's start from the grains used basically for paximadia. On the islands, we don't have enough good soil to produce wheat, so the breads are made from barley, and barley spoils very easily. So it had to be made paximadia. And in ancient times, basically the food of the ancient times was a barley gruel or like barley flatbreads. So this is something that it's not like something new, something people invented. They had barley, so they had to make some kind of bread, and the bread was paximadia, which were dried. We don't have a lot of wood to bake bread every day because, as I said, barley spoils. So they made it from barley. It was forgotten later on when we started in Greece to import wheat from all over the world, from Canada, from the United States, and from all over. I guess it's the same in Turkey, and people became really enamored with white, very fluffy bread from the supermarket. And they were kind of like half forgotten, but not in Crete, where people liked them very much. And then slowly they became, people started looking for them again, and now they are their thing, and you'll find it in all the bakeries, and we make them also, some people make it at home or we buy them. There are commercial ones. In Crete, there are a lot of bakeries in Crete that produce very interesting ones, and I have here some to show you from Crete, very different ones. For example, this is made with some carob flour also, because there are carob trees in Crete also, and this has also carob trees. And when they are very big, they are called kafkala, which means like the head, big ones. And then they cut them to pieces and they sell them to pieces. These are the barley paximadia. These are without a hole, but smaller ones. And these are also, the other kinds that you find, commercial ones and different kinds. And, but they have become, tell me, you asked me something.
Mainly, Aglaya, it is
Yeah?
because of the absence of wheat on the islands, they
Yes.
preferred barley.
It's
Am I correct?
It's not like they preferred. In the old days, they didn't have wheat, they had barley. Now barley is basically used to feed the hens and the goats. But in the old days, it was the basic grain. So they make the paximadia with barley, basically, mostly with barley. And
Let
now,
me ask you another question, if you allow me. Barley, you said, does not keep very well.
no.
So they had to bake these biscuits, these rusks, for, say, for a year's kind of nourishment?
No, it's
After
not
the
like
harvest?
it lasts, but the bread becomes dense and not very appealing the second day. That's what I mean.
Okay.
So that's why they bake them again to make them crunchy and keep them. But that was the nourishment. Yes, that was the basic bread.
And in Kirit, they still use barley.
They, for the paximadia, not only in Crete, but all over Greece now, they use barley, because also people who don't want to eat a lot of gluten, they like barley, they like half barley because it is, less, it has less gluten, but that's a completely different story. Yes, we use, now we use, but what I wanted to show you is that the old kind, I don't know if you can see that, the old kind of flour, look how much chaff it has. This is the old kind of flour. This is
Can
what
you show it in your palm? Can we see it in your palm, Aglaya?
My palm, yes, yes. you
Perhaps
can.
we'll be able to
Because
really see.
the one we buy, I guess the one you get, Defne, is this kind of thing, huh?
Yes, I would say so. It is quite.
Okay, because
fine.
this is the commercially, this is the one gets commercially, but basically this is, I don't know how you can, oh, there.
Thank you.
Can you see
I
this?
see. It's very coarse.
Very coarse. It has a
Uh-huh.
lot of shaft, a lot of shaft. And this is because if you see the old paximadia, they have this shaft in them, and it has much more flavor, because in the old days, that's how barley was. Now they have different kinds of barley. Barley is one of the grains that are very difficult to take out all the shaft, the old kind of barley. The new kinds of barley are very different. They can, they can take the chaff out much more easily.
It
And
is very interesting, actually.
this is what we find in the supermarkets. Unfortunately, you have to know people who cultivate barley, or you can use the one that is sold as feed for the chicken, and then try to take out the stones and all that and grind it yourself. Or
I
take
have to add something, Aglaya, if you allow me. Mytilene, Lesbos,
Yes.
Crete, and Ayvalık is like a family. It used to be a family. These three locations, historically, they shared similar cultures. They shared the trade. Ayvalık used to be the harbor. The olive and the olive oil would come to Ayvalık, and from there it would be exported to Europe, especially to France, to Marseille. And because of that, this tradition of making rusks, of course, happens here as well. We also have it in Ayvalık. But the funny thing is, when I look at the rusks of Bodrum, when I look at the rusks of Kirit, they're brown. But the rusks they make here is white. It is because Ayvalık had wheat, and Ayvalık had quite a lot of windmills. Therefore, it was kind of a central location for wheat production and flour production that you can see in the rusk. So eating rusks became a tradition, but it was not because of the need to keep the dough or the harvest or the bread. It was more because it was custom. People liked it that way. But when we look at the rusks of Bodrum, they're very similar. I have a couple here as well. Aglaya, I'd like to show you mine. The ones I keep in a market tot, which has serious large holes. So they're dry, so I don't worry about them. But can you see? It's pretty dark. It is of barley. Let me see. Yes, you can hear it. It's hard as a brick, but they keep very well. What you do is you just put them in water.
Exactly.
In the old days, they would even dump them in seawater, salted water, take it out, and then halve it, or just bring them into pieces and put it in there
with olive oil,
etc. Say again, Aglaya.
Drizzle with a little bit of olive oil and sprinkle with oregano and eat them. Yeah.
This one is mine.
The best snack.
Recipe. Oh wow! Only 4 is left, because Vasf and I have been eating these. Today I will be producing more, so we won't be out of them. But these are the rusk. These are the paximadia I made following Aglaya's recipe. Aglaya's recipe I brought to you because it is a recipe that can take a lot of abuse. Pardon me, Aglaya, because I know you told me that baking is not that big of a deal. It is not. I know during the pandemic, people went crazy and they all wanted to make sourdough bread in the best quality. Well, what is nourishing, what is good, what is plenty does not have to be that difficult, that mind-boggling. Sometimes the things that you put together, if they are of good quality, if you follow the tradition, end up mostly in a nutritious thing. Now I have to start with your recipe, Aglaya, because my sludge is about to make its entrance onto my counter. And before we start, I have to tell you, I have 3 flies that want to become famous. Please ignore them. I've been trying to put them away, but it is an amazingly hot winter. It was 17 Celsius yesterday, and even the artichokes are showing their heads. We're in deep trouble. It wasn't raining. It did not rain for several months, and then last week it started, so it's also wet. The flies are everywhere. So this is the yeast that we have woken up. It's ready here, and then I am going to use first the rest of my white flour, the wheat flour. Of course, you can use whole wheat. You can use other varieties. Mine is unbleached, but is not whole wheat. And then the very fine, unfortunately, Aglaya, it's not coarse, the barley flour. And to that, I will add first the salt. I'm not going to add everything together. I just want to show you one thing, which is what I do, which Aglaya does not tell you to do. This is my version of the paximadia. I use more spices than she advises.
Good.
She says
Good.
1 tablespoon is fine.
Very good, very good. It's even better. Yeah.
I use 2, 1 for the green fennel and 1 for the anise seed. So I don't only use more. I also pound them first. I like them smaller in the dough. They leave a lot of smell. But Aglaya tells me there are many other spices that you can use. She was telling me about it, even a saffron paximadia. Could you tell us a little about that, Aglaya?
Well, on the island of Astipalea, which is in the middle of the Aegean Sea, if you draw a line between Kos and Santorini, it's in the middle. It's a small island there, and they just happen to have some very good saffron growing in the mountains. So the women collect saffron, wild saffron. And the women collect the saffron and they make the Easter biscuits, the Easter biscuits, which are called the yellow, the kitrina koulouria, the yellow biscuits these are for Easter. And they make them, instead of using olive oil or any kind of other butter or anything, they use the fresh cheese and also some water, but they use the fresh goat's cheese. They have goats on the island and they use fresh goat's cheese instead of any other fat in the yeast. And the paximadia,
olive oil.
Wonderful. You can find them in my website. You can find pictures and you can see, how they are. The Astipalian paximadia. Yes.
Okay, so I add my spices to my flour and salt combination. And then to that, I add some sugar. Okay, you may say, why make it sweet? This is not too sweet. It is just 2 tablespoons of some sweet. It could be honey, it could be carob molasses, it could be date molasses, or you can halve the amount. I wouldn't say you can double the amount. Yes, but you can halve the amount, but put some sweet in it as well. It really makes a delicious paximadia. And then when it comes to the water and wine, and when we talk about wine, Aglaya advises that we use a Greek variety. Aglaya, tell me how you pronounce that. Daphne what?
Mavrodaphne.
Mavrodaphne.
It means the Kara Daphne. Daphne means Kara Daphne. That's what.
Black Daphne.
The black Daphne, yes. So Mavrodaphne is a varietal. It's a great varietal from the Peloponnese, and they usually make sweet wine with that. And it's available everywhere. And it's the wine we use in the church. I mean, a kind of wine that we use in the church. So it's easily found everywhere.
Red. Is it not? It is red.
Red, yeah.
Red wine.
Dark red.
And that's exactly why you advise us to use port if we do not have that
Exactly.
variety.
But if you use port, you need to use more sweetener, or molasses, or wine, or honey. I don't use sugar. I use honey or molasses. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm vegan, so I use sugar, plain sugar. Yes, it was
Yeah.
brown sugar, but still it's
With
sugar.
easy, yes.
But the thing is, you first just give it a stir with your fingers. Make sure that everything is combined. After all, we have put some salt in it, and we're gonna add our yeast combination. Salt and yeast sometimes don't agree with each other, although we have a lot of yeast over there still. And then we are going to add the olive oil and the liquid stuff, but we're going to do it one by one after I add the yeast stuff, because I am kind of puzzled with the original amounts. I told Aglaya, I said probably the flour you're using is different than what we're using, and exactly that is the case. She showed us. Therefore, some of the amounts may look a little different, so we're going to go carefully. But
And it has to do with, Defne, it has to do with the weather also. I made paximadia today because it's very wet here. By the way, the rain is coming to you.
It's raining here.
So it was a lot of rain today. It was very wet. So I used much less water because it was very wet. So how much water you use, it's, it depends. But I also want the dough, I want it to be quite watery, sticky, in all my breads.
Oh, very nice. But you have the original recipe, and you're watching me do it.
Play around. You play around.
And then I'm telling you, this is an excellent dough. This is not like the 36-hour sourdough kind of a thing. This is not going to make you wonder where the dough is going to. Just go bit by bit. I've just added the yeasted combination, and onto that, I'm going to add the olive oil. Yes, it is a rusk with some fat in it, which is good. It's nutritious. And then I'm going to add a little water, but a little water. The rest I'm keeping because I want to use wine in this.
The wine base.
It's very funny why I want to use wine in this, because it says so in the recipe. I'm going to ask Aglaya why she puts the red wine in there, but the color comes out magnificent. Second, this is a wonderful way of using leftover wine. Yes. This is exactly the amount of wine that's been sitting on the counter for the last 3 days. And this is an excellent way of using it, I guess. Well, in my country, liquor is very, very, very expensive. This is a governmental preference, so there's nothing I can do about it. So using port is luxurious. Yes. Perhaps next time I will add a lot more molasses to it and go straight with the wine, since Aglaya told me to do so. But I'm going to add some port to my wine. Yes, a good amount of it. And then see how it comes together. See what I've got? Yes. And onto that, I'm adding the wine. I'm keeping some of it because I want to see if it comes together or not. If it becomes too wet, I don't like it. I'm a baker.
Add a little bit of flour. Add a little more flour. Add a little more flour. I mean, it's not.
Yes, but I think I'm done. See, it's coming together, Aglaya.
Yeah, great.
It is coming together. Yes.
It's a very forgiving dough.
Put it on my countertop so that you can easily see what yours should look like. Although Aglaya tells us that even a little watery is fine.
Mine is much more water, yes. I would have added more water to that.
I'm okay if we do not agree on
no.
on the dough.
No.
The result will be very delicious.
And as you knead it, it's very soft and nice. Now that's a wonderful dough. Yeah.
Okay, you like it. Good.
I love it.
I think I have used less than a cup of water and a little less than of wine and port combined than it says in the recipe that we have shared. So we're not adding more flour for
No,
you
it
may
doesn't
not
need more
have
flour.
enough flour at
Very
hand.
nice soft dough. No.
All
Excellent.
right, good.
Excellent. Can I tell you a secret?
Please.
I just made it this
Yes.
morning because we were discussing it, and instead of using wine, I used beer and molasses. Here is what I came up.
Good, delicious.
A can of beer, and then a little bit of wine, and then a car of molasses.
Okay, Aglaia, tell me, why do they use wine? Is it the same reason of why I'm using it, because it's leftover, or is there another reason?
No. I came up with the idea of adding the wine to the paximadia recipe from a festive bread from Crete, which was called pendothelitico, and it was kneaded with red wine. You can say leftover. Usually these wines in Crete, most of the wines are semi-sweet, as they are in most islands, because they leave the grapes in the sun. There is a lot of sun, so the wines, people love these semi-sweet wines. And they had this red wine, and they used it to this festive bread. And I said, why don't I use wine in the paximadi? And that's how I came up with. This is my variation, the wine. Actually, it's not completely traditional, but I believe, I'm sure that you agree with me, that you all agree with me, that a tradition all around the world, and especially in the Mediterranean, it's not written in stone, the cooking tradition. Every cook, I have taken some recipes from my mother, and then I'm adding my own things to the recipes. I'm adding my own variations. And then, the people who will come after me, probably they will add their own. We have to do whatever we think it's more using the ingredients that we have. We have to do whatever we believe it's better or we like better. But starting, as you said, starting with the ingredients that we have at hand, not, trying for extremely exotic ingredients, by all means.
Well, actually, I mean, at the moment when you go to a supermarket, you are driven crazy. You see all sorts of things. You see the maple syrup, which is like crazy in price. And then you see honey coming from everywhere, all around the world. And then you see different varieties of sugar. And then you see different varieties of flour. But nothing really makes sense unless you can connect them to a geography. Because if they are coming from far, far, far away, then you truly do not know whose food you have taken, right? If it was from your geography, you would know. I mean, I don't eat honey because I do not want to take the food of the bees from them. Okay, that's my preference because I see the bees, I know the bees, I see them around, and I also cultivate stuff outside in the garden. I try to grow my own greens and eat from my own garden. So the bees speak to me. But you would also be able to speak to the barley, to the corn, to the wheat, if you knew where they were coming from. And actually, this kind of a dough allows you to experiment with whatever you have at hand and whatever is grown around you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So if you put some carob in it, it could be the carob flour, or it could be the
bit of carob
as a sweetener. You have something with carob. It works. You can do it with rye. You can do it with barley, rye, and corn. You can do it with wheat. If you come from a wheat country, that's okay. But you see, in the next 10 years to 15, it is said that eating pasta is going to be a very expensive experience. I read in the news just a week ago, in Konya, the wheat has not germed yet. It did not show its green tips. It's because of the drought, of course. And in a country like mine, where wheat is grown abundantly, if we don't have wheat, what are we going to turn to? What are we going to have? Perhaps barley, huh, Aglaya? I understand it is easier than wheat. Everybody
Barley
wants
is
that white, amazing bread with incredible holes, with the superb crust.
Mhm. No, but the barley,
And eating this
barley is
brown thing.
heavy. Barley, it's heavy. And that's why we need, you spoke about why we're using so much yeast, because barley, it's not like wheat that rises easily. It doesn't have a lot of gluten, so it needs much more yeast. I mean, you and I use basically sourdough. I mean, we have sourdough and we use this as a leavening, but you have to use much more if you have barley. So that's why you use the powder. You use 2 tablespoons of powdered yeast. That's, that's why you do that. But otherwise, if you like heavy bread, we like have heavy bread in my home. My husband Costas loves the heavier the bread, the better for him. If it's if the bread is unsuccessful, and I say, oh my God, the bread didn't rise well, he said, oh, keep it for me, keep it for me. I hope it will succeed. He loves a very heavy bread. So you see, it's a matter of taste. What we eat, but
To me, it is a bit more than a matter of, yeah, you may like heavy bread, but then you would fill it with seeds, with bran, and etc. And eventually you will have a very dense slice, and it will be nutritious as well. I'm not going to argue that white, a very good, a very decent white bread of sourdough is not a good possibility. Of course it is, but it is not going to be possible. And the amount of water we use to grow wheat and wheat only is already problematic. So it's important that we see what's around us. Is it corn? Is it rye? Is it barley? Do we have oats? Do we have, did I say rye? We can use all these instead of wheat when it comes to paximadia or Peksimet. Now, in regards to Peksimet, it is very funny because I've seen this almost everywhere. When I say almost everywhere, I'm not talking about the Americas, and I'm not talking about the far east, Eastern Asia. But other than that, in the old world, all around the old world, from Italy to Lebanon, from Azerbaijan to Cyprus, there is a certain rusk that people bake, traditionally bake and eat. They use it when they are traveling. They eat it when they are migrating. They eat it when they're grazing their sheep. They eat it in the middle of the winter with some soup. They eat it as it's their bread. So I think a sustainable piece of a bread actually relies not only the craftsmanship of the baker, but relies on the intelligence of the baker of putting all these things together. And if it does not work in a successful, amazing white bread with a good crust with holes, then it can be turned into this, some people call it brick-like, but very crusty, very crunchy paximadia. Now, I think I bought your book, Aglaya, the one you talk about the Greek islands. I think it was published in the late 90s or early 20s.
2000.
Very nice. I must have bought it immediately because when I first read your book, what interested me most was the frugality of the cuisine. As Elizabeth, tell me how to pronounce her last name. Michele?
Minkili.
Thank you. Elizabeth Minkili underlines that the next frontier is the cuisine of the poor. That teaches us a lot. The cuisine of the kitchen, the food traditions of the poor teaches us a lot. How we make a do with whatever we have at hand. Whatever is not at hand, how we turn that and use it in another way. And then how we feed our selves and the ones we love, and how we make it last. I think that is in there, in the kitchen of the poor people. And the poor people, it doesn't always mean that they do not have money in their pockets. Poor can be the geography, which the earth will be in the very near future. The geography may be poor. The geography may not have water, adequate water, may not have adequate fruit trees, may not have adequate amount of wheat, this and that, or grass. What do? And the islands, the Greek islands, are an amazing showcase for this kind of cuisine. The horta, the wild greens, right, Aglaya, and the paximadi make the most of it. And I, from the very moment till today, I always wanted to ask Aglaya, and during our meetings last week, a couple of days ago, I especially did not ask this one. I want to hear it right now today with you. What made you go and travel around those islands and investigate? Because everybody is interested in the higher cuisine. Everyone wants to put a lot of butter there, a lot of cheese there, the truffle here, and then the whatever over there. Nobody is interested in this cuisine, in this kitchen, and nobody actually reports the issues related to that. What made you do that? In 2000, right after the 90s, the luxurious 80s and the 90s, how did you end up there, Aglaya?
First of all, I was not always a cook. I was a journalist for many years. I was always cooking. I grew up with these foods in my home because it was right after the Second World War. We didn't have a lot of things. So we have to do, my mother had to do with very little things because we didn't have a lot of money. And we were four of us, my sister and I, and my mother and father, and we had to eat very frugally. I remember my father bringing in the house, 4 pieces of fish, barbuni, you know, the red mullet.
Is it red mullet?
Bringing 4. And because my mother wanted to give 2 to my father, you know, red mullet is this big. So she was frying the fish. My father, he wanted to give 1 to me, 1 to my sister. And because she wanted to give 2 to my father, she was eating all the heads of the red mullet, the fried egg. And she said, this is the best part of the red mullet. And up until I grew up, I really thought that the heads, I still eat the heads, the fried heads. But that's how I grew up. We had meat only once a week. We couldn't afford chicken. When I was growing up, chicken was the most expensive meat. It was only reserved for people who were ill. But these were wonderful foods. Horta, you know, all the vegetables we had in the garden. And so I like these foods. And as you said, when I started researching foods, I wanted to go, I am from an island. I live on Kea, where my paternal grandmother came from. So I live on an island here, but islands are very different. Or not all the islands are the same, but they are very small. And in the old days, they didn't have much. Santorini, which is now the most expensive of all the islands. I mean, properties in Santorini cost as much as they cost in New York City. Then it was extremely poor. People died of hunger. And they came to Athens, the girls or the boys came to work in Athens because their families didn't have enough to feed them. My grandfather left Kea when he was 12 years old because there were 8 kids in the family. They couldn't feed him. I mean, there wasn't enough food. So he went to Athens. So, but these were wonderful foods. I never craved any kind of these things. And when I see all these, foods full of butter and the melting cheeses and all that, they don't appeal to me. And I wanted to go back and see how the things have started. And now it seems that now it's very fashionable. Now, everybody does vegetarian books. But you know, when I started doing this kind of thing, it was a long time ago.
Even with the vegetarian books, actually, people are still not thinking in this way,
No,
Aglaya. I
they-
think the cuisine of the poor, oh, how does Italian say it? The cucina
Cucina povera.
the povera, right?
Yeah, cucina povera. It's the Italian term.
I think the Italian do it better. They are quite proud people of their
Southern Italian.
cuisine, and it really doesn't matter where the food comes from, which culture, upper or higher, here or there, down place. It really is not the idea. They want to preserve the whole culture, which is a good thing, because the only recipe I was able to find, other than the paximadia and peksimet, in a way,
Mhm.
was of the friselle. The Italian also had a round peksimet kind of a paximadia kind of a rusk, which they eat. They prefer it in the south. As Aglaya told me a couple of days ago, the Northerns don't deal with that. They have their cheeses and their meat. But the more you go down to the south, you get poorer, and whatever you have at hand, you make a do. And they have this lovely paximadia friselle, and they top it with tomatoes and some cheese sometimes. When I was visiting a village, I was offered, because they realized that I was vegan and I wouldn't eat any cheese. They said, okay, we can give you that. We can top it with some tomatoes, salt, and some capers. It was my breakfast for the next 4 or 5 days. So what we can learn from this for future, Aglaya? I know we do not know what we are heading to. The future looks quite dim, and the title of this conference and then the exhibition is Thinking Food Futures. I want to be able to give something bright to discuss about. I want this to be a kind of a meditation on less, more, value, understanding, a lot or none. And paximadia will allow us to think on these issues. And as a meditation, where do you think the lessons will come from for our future when you think in food terms? The islands, could they be good teachers to us?
I think that we should go back as if we have older women relatives, we have to go back and learn from them, because they are dying, and what they used to do, it's dying with them, unfortunately. Because food habits, as you said, change rapidly now, and soon everybody will be eating the same thing. So we have to go back and go back to the source. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I kind of like that's what I'm trying to ask people to do. Have you seen this series of videos that Italians did, the pasta grannies?
Oh yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, these are the women who do the pasta. Okay, but you can go back to grandmothers with a cell phone and ask them how they cooked all the different things that every part of the country produces, and take little videos. That's what I think we should do. That's and this is very important, because we can learn from them things that they did and are rapidly going extinct, unfortunately.
Okay, let's turn the subject to enjoying food as well. I mean, we're letting this dough rise. It will sit here for an hour or so until it doubles, and then until we meet again in the next session. But we also We should also know how we're going to use this, though. What it's going to look like, and how are we going to enjoy it after it is baked, so that we keep our expectations high. Right, Aglaya?
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
I enjoy breaking it into pieces and putting in my soup. I eat my vegetable soups with my paximadia. What do you do with them?
I do also salads, a lot of salads. I mean, what the so-called Greek salad, what they call Greek salad, I always have paximadi in the salad, in the tomato salad in the summer. In the winter, I make also some salad with greens, similar to what Americans call Caesar salad. You can make that with paximadi also, and it's wonderful. And with yogurt, using yogurt instead of using mayonnaise. That's what I do, and it's really wonderful with paximadi. And also on the island of Syros, they use it with instead of any kind of pasta or rice, they use it in the fish soups. It's wonderful fish soups.
Is that kakavia?
Yes, in the kakavia. And they will use it, they use it there, and they also put it on, I mean, as the fish boils, they put it on top of the, on a rack on top of the, and it absorbs all the flavor of the fish, and then you add it to the fish, and you can use it as pasta, as you said, in any kind of soup. Instead of using tarkana or trahana, as we call it, you can use broken paximadi. It's very good and very easy. And in Italy, they have this, in southern Italy, they have this tomato soup with fresh tomatoes, which is with paximadi, with friselle, It's called papa al pomodoro. Papa al pomodoro. It's a natural dish.
Aglaya, I also heard that they used to pound these rusks and use it with meat to stuff sausage legs. And then they would also pound them and then add quite a lot of raisins, dried raisins, salt,
exactly. That's a sweet.
Doesn't matter. They pound it together, make a really delicious kind of nibbling. So this is the basis of an diverse, actually, food library. You can use it for anything and everything you want. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And the sweet that you described, it's a sweet again from Santorini, which used to be, I described that on the island, on the island book, I think. It's one very frugal sweet. You pound the paximadi together with sweet wine and dried figs and some spices, aniseeds, and you make little balls and you roll them in sesame seeds if you have sesame seeds, or in walnuts or almonds. And it's also nutritious. And this is the sweet that they had because this is what they had. And that was a Christmas sweet.
It is a Christmas sweet. And then after last Christmas, you shared a recipe of those really nice sweet cookies that you covered with syrup. You also told me that they're kind of a paximadia as well. Paximadia can be sweet as well. Can you describe that recipe for us?
Yes. Well, these are the melomacarona. The dough is made with a lot of olive oil and orange zest. And also some brandy if you have, or any kind of sweet wine. And then you shape it, you bake it as biscuits until they are very dry, and then you dip them in syrup, in honey syrup. We do it with honey syrup, but you can do it in date syrup or whatever you like. And
sugar syrup.
As walnuts or almonds also.
Delicious. And actually, Livia, Ushan, do you have any questions? Would you like to participate? And I checked, but I didn't see any questions coming from our friends on the sideline. Have you collected any? Since we have something like 15 minutes. No, we have plenty of time, 20 minutes. I'd like to invite you to join us.
Thank you so much, Defne. It's been wonderful to watch actually not only your presentation, but this amazing conversation with Aglaya. Your participation made this even more special, Aglaya. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. What are you talking about? I love being here.
From my point of view, because we are also witnessing this for the first time, it almost felt like from time to time watching a conversation between mother and daughter, almost.
Yes, exactly.
Such way that, you know, my mom would also describe some of the things, which also felt very, I felt the nutrition in my body already, I could say. People did add some comments, but not really questions yet. We also think there will be some time and possibility in the afternoon session for extra questions. From my side, I just would like to add, it is not a question, but seeing both the local and geographical differences of how to approach to this very otherwise similar looking, like seemingly very similar food, but how different it could be, and all these subtle details, seeing that was really very inspiring and impressive for me. And of course, seeing the reasons behind was also very important. Thank you very much.
Food creates culture, Ushan. That's the best thing, I guess. I mean, food is security. Food sustains, of course, one's livelihood, but it's also a culture creator. It creates connections. It gives you the full thing. I can never understand why people are not really interested in the history of food. Rather, they want just to get the recipe and go to the supermarket, buy the ingredients, come home and copy that. That is, to me, a useless waste of energy, because you don't have a larder where you go and pick things from. Now that's not a good thing. Second, what you are eating actually is part of a culture. You're not interested in that. So when you taste it, what difference is that going to make in your life? Having tasted paximadia without all this story, it wouldn't be the same. But since we are baking it together, and since we know all these connections, it is going to be an amazing treat. Tomorrow, Sunday morning, you can dip your paximadia in your cup of tea or your coffee, or if you have at hand, your soup.
That's true.
I say I'm definitely ready to try my own paximadia after we're done with this conference. Thank you so much. And I actually, we have a question from an audience, but before we get to it, I just want to kind of like have this one question for both of you, which really intrigued me in your presentation. I think Aglaya, I can't remember if it was Aglaya or Defne, who was talking about this idea of that the geography is what is, you know, where the poverty lies. Not that poverty among people goes away, but that the challenge ahead of us is that aspect of the shifting of geography to the land itself. And I was just kind of curious in terms of, in what way do you see that poverty of geography and land shifting the future of paximadia? In what way, you know, if in the past we did it with barley and now we maybe do it with wheat because of different geographies, with climate change, with land being able to produce less or not being as fertile, like what is the future of paximadia?
What
What is
barley?
the future of pasta? What is the future of bread? I mean, it is a long, long list of things, I guess, right?
Yeah, but actually, barley. Let's go to the grain. Barley is a grain that grows much easier than other grains, and it can also grow on the islands. You know that we don't have big plains, but we have terraces, small terraces, where the people have created this kind of like verandas, throwing the stones and creating small, because it's low, it's all very mountainous. So they created small terraces and they were growing barley in the terraces. You can grow barley easily, much more easily than other grains. And also, I mean, these are grains that grow easier than the wheat. So barley, it's going to be, you know, something that you can even grow yourself. Now they grow barley for the goat to feed animals. It's an animal feed now. So they grow barley all over. So I guess it's an easy thing to grow. I'm not a gardener and I'm not an agricultural, but I know that it's much easier to grow barley. But as I said, you cannot just have barley bread by itself. It needs something else. It's much too heavy. It won't make bread the way we know it, barley. So it needs other things too, but you can mix in other grains.
Well, our planet is getting poorer and poorer. Our quote unquote resources are diminishing. And food is going to change for sure. So will paximadia, along with pasta and bread. But I have seen people put together day-old bread, the crumbles, and some water, and whatever they have at hand, and turn it into a dough after a couple hours of soaking, and then bake that again. So I bet we will come up with new uses of either grains or whatever is left at hand. And we will always come up with a paximadia kind of a thing, a rusk or a porridge or whatever that is. But the thing is, I think we have to be more conscious of what we're consuming and where they are coming from and what cost they have on the ecology. Because this is a finite planet. It is not the amount of people that live on the planet. It is the amazing hunger we have that cannot be satisfied, that is diminishing all the goodness, all the bounty we find on the planet. So as long as we know how to make a do with things, especially when it comes to food, when we understand its connection to the tradition, to the community, to the family, to the history, to the well-being of our own bodies, of ourselves, I think we will always be able to come up with new solutions. I hope this is answer to your question, Lydia.
And there is a question about how can we adjust the recipe for basically for wheat flour. Wheat flour, you can also use whole wheat, but you can also use a combination of wheat flour, oats, and any kind of grain, corn also. Yes, corn meal, yellow corn meal also. That's a combination that I also use sometimes. Wheat, cornmeal, and oats you can use together if you don't find barley. And
so whatever you have, you will make a do.
The same, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, use some combination of wheat meal, whole wheat, barley, oats, and cornmeal. Equal amounts, let's say equal amounts. It will be more or less the same. I mean, play around with it. This is a recipe that can easily, as I told you, can be easily changed. You can add and take out stuff or add beer as I did today, because that's what I wanted to do. And for this paximadia, I used also oatmeal, because I had some oatmeal and they are quite, quite similar. I haven't dried them yet, but I guess they will dry well.
There's another technical question, by the way, whether you can do this with a sourdough starter.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's much better if you have sourdough. But I cannot give you portions because my sourdough is very different from yours. I'm not following the exact feeding times and all that, so I cannot give you portions. You have to play around with your sourdough and find out how much. Make sure that you use, if you make this recipe that Defne showed, you have to use double the amount that you would have used for if you were making bread. Double the amount, Because this is
I
heavy
have
though.
tried variations actually. I have tried to use less yeast, instant yeast. If you want to do that, you can use half of the instant yeast and you will let it rise overnight.
Right.
It actually sours a little, but that is an added taste.
Sure.
Second, you can use, here I think we have used something like 4.5 cups of flour to something like 2 cups, 2.5 cups of liquid. You can use sourdough starter with similar properties, not 1-to-1, but 2-to-1, kind of 2 flour to 1 liquid, kind of a sourdough starter in that. And I have used that kind of a sourdough starter in this exact recipe. I added 2 cups, American cups of sourdough to the amount.
Exactly.
So that worked as well.
Yes.
And thirdly, I also tried using the chickpea starter. Chickpea starter is an interesting one, and over on the Ayvalık side of the Aegean, we have this delicious bread, chickpea starter yeasted wheat bread, and people here slice those breads and dry them in the oven, and that also is eaten as a peksimet. So I tried the chickpea starter. What you do is actually in the evening, in the afternoon, you add 3 to 4 chickpeas, broken, dried chickpeas, into a cup of flour. You add some water, and again, you make a sludge. You cover it, and you leave it overnight in a warmer place in the kitchen. Usually, it takes something like 18 hours. So that it has this lively, bubbly thing. But if you let it sit longer, it has a very, very awful smell. You should be careful with it. And then if you add that to your dough of paximadia, peksimet, you can also leaven it with that. But it is a tricky one. If you get a hold of it, it is a wonderful thing because you can use it when you're making crisp turşu neydi? I have to ask for pickles. When you're making pickles in the dead of winter, when it's very cold, like cabbage pickles, you also add 1 or 2 chickpeas in that. It'll give it a kick. But the minute you get used to that, you can even make a delicious ginger ale with that. It has that capacity. But for some, it is even less reliable than sourdough. So if I were to try my hand, I would first use less instant yeast, let it sit overnight, see how that goes. And the more I get to know the dough, and the more I know what I am going to end up when everything is dried and everything is crisp and hard like a rock, then I would try my hand in other leaveners.
But usually in Greece, the chickpea leavened bread is made into white paximadia, not the dark paximadia. Usually, that's what it's usually made, and we make it a lot. And this is really very interesting. It has a wonderful flavor. It's what Americans call salt rising bread. They call that salt rising bread.
Do they use chickpeas in the salt rising bread? I did not know that.
They don't use chickpeas, but they use potato or something like that. It's the same technique though, the fermentation. It's the fermentation that produces, like in the chickpeas, it's the fermentation. And you can do it with any kind of beans. You can do it with beans, you can do it with lentil. Try it with lentil. It's delicious. It's even more delicious than it is with chickpeas. With lentils, it's do that with lentils as well.
I'm a little confused with the salt rising bread, but I'll definitely.
That's the technique. It's called rising. So let's not confuse this. The technique is called, people who bake with these ancient techniques call the chickpea flour bread, the chickpea rising bread, they call it salt rising. So let's, you know, yeah.
So we have two more questions arrived in the chat, but I also invite people to show themselves and ask the questions directly, maybe use the microphone. I think that would be fine. We have a little less than 10 minutes left now, just to be aware of the time. One of the questions is from Bahar Behbahani. Sorry, Bahar. I'm wondering how can we get through this in the very patriarchal capitalist world, she asked, either individually or collectively. Sometimes following a simple and healthy food on our table seems like a fight and wrestle with this strong system, she said. And the other question I'd like to read is from Devlet Shah again, from the same participant who asked about the sourdough. She asks, what do you think about using kombucha substitute for a wine? It is sweet, also fermented.
What do you say, Aglaya?
I don't know anything about, I mean, I don't know much about kombucha, so I would rather somebody else, you know, I only tried it once. I don't know. I don't make it, so I don't know what it is exactly. I mean, I know what it is, and I'm not familiar with that. It's not in my culture. It's a different culture, and I don't know it, so I cannot really answer that. But I don't know. But I mean, making things collectively, I didn't understand that question. That I want to understand more, because food is something that you share anyway. And you know, eating with people, having a full table, that's what we miss these days. Having people around our table, sharing our food. This is the best thing, I think, in the world, for me at least. This is the most important thing. I don't mind cooking for 3 days and then enjoying the foods, sitting around the table and enjoying foods with friends. I love that. About patriarchal, I don't really.
I'd like to reflect on that actually, Aglaya. I do not know where Bahar is coming from, and I do not know whether my answer will directly talk to her, but I have seen a lot of families where men dominate the kitchen, although it is women who cook. It is men and men's desire that designs the table and what is cooked. Now, here we are offering a very, very frugal, very simple solution to food. In some places I know, in Turkey, I have seen as well, and I have heard about, if you brought this kind of a hard like a brick piece of a bread with some soup, man would say, don't we have any beef in the house? I know this is for true. There are some areas like Gaziantep, Southeast Turkey. Meat is very important. Meat means sustenance. Meat means nutrition. Meat means security. Meat means food. This does not mean food. This is crick-crack. This is like something that you would put in your pocket and snack on your way to the bus station or whatever, but it is not food. But I think, although geographically we value these traditions, all these bits and pieces of information tell us a lot about culture, and we should not be just overriding them. But still, at the end of the day, this is a planet, a small planet, and I hate the word resources, but this is what we call them. The resources are diminishing. So we have to be very clever, very intelligent about it, about what we are consuming, how we are consuming, plus how can we make it more and how we can share it with others. So this is a good meditation, I thought, would be for us to talk about these questions, talk around these questions,
right?
See what we can come up with.
Absolutely. Also, in some parts of the world, as you described, there are parts of the world and parts of Turkey, basically, where meat was the basic food. They had a lot of meat. That's how they grew up. I mean, we didn't, but in other parts of the world, uh, they had a lot of meat. That doesn't mean that they were very rich or anything. That's what they had. They had meat. There are cultures that are where meat plays a very important role. Now they have to, to take care of that, of course, and be more frugal. But that's how they grew up. We didn't grow up with meat because we didn't have meat. Meat was for us, you see, goats and sheep for us, there were some, and they were only to make cheese. They weren't enough to feed the people. It was only a festive thing, only for Easter and, the big celebrations. But you had a lot of, in parts of Turkey, they had a lot of meat, and that's why they ate meat.
And I'd like to add a bit more actually to this whole thing. Several years ago, I gave an interview. Luckily, I wasn't taken that seriously because my wording was not all that proper. I invited women to take their kitchens back. I didn't actually want them to go back to their kitchens, but it was more like go defend your kitchen, your nutritious food, your valuable culture. I didn't want to say that it had to be women to do that. Of course, we're all equals, and there is no other. Everyone needs to be included in the kitchen. Everyone needs to know a lot about kitchen. But I suggested that we should go and take over our kitchens because I was worried that our kitchens were taken by the industrialized companies. That was my aim. So I'm not all that concerned about the man in the family. I'm not all that concerned about their needs or their ambitions or their traditions. I think this is going to be more of a fight between us and the companies. The companies keep coming with solutions to things. GMO seeds, nutritious breads. They put vitamin E and B into bread.
Yes, I know.
Vitamin E and B is in abundance in wheat. You don't have to do that, but they do it. I think our problem here is not our cultures, our families, our traditions, our expectations. It is the companies and us. That's exactly why I keep saying we have to look into what we are consuming, where that is coming from, who's producing it, how do we value it? A grain, a piece of a grain, who decides how much that weighs? How much are we going to pay for that single loaf of bread? Who decides about that? And who gets the money? What percentage of that goes into the producer directly? And how does Mother Earth, how does this planet stay fertile, intact, while we are producing and eating and feeding and enjoying and continuing our lives on this beautiful piece of land? I think our troubles, our problems are not within ourselves. It is a civilization kind of a big problem. We have to build a new one, and the new one needs to be a frugal one. The new one needs to be one that is open to participations. The new one needs to be open for joy, but at the same time needs to be open to new ideas, to new things, to it should not close doors because this is that is that. Truly, we need a better civilization. I know a better world is possible. Hi, Kostas, you're checking the light over there. Well, this is the end of the first session, and as Ushan and Livia know, after 6 p.m. I get very tired. My language skills diminish, so I will need a break before I get back and stay intelligent and come up with full sentences. Please meet us in about an hour and a half, right, Ushan? It's that much. No, an hour and a half.
1 hour and a half? Okay.
Yes, which makes it 8 o'clock over your side and 9 o'clock over my side, but 1 p.m. in the US. Well, this is complicated.
Oh, hang on. One and a half hour from now?
An hour and a half from now.
Ah, so 7:30 for me. Yeah.
No, 8 o'clock for you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, 8 o'clock. Oh my God, it's too late for me.
I'm telling you, it's difficult to calculate these
Oh,
hours.
no, it's too late for me. And what time are we finishing the next?
We have just an hour.
1 hour. Oh, okay.
Yes, between 8 and 9 your time, 9
Okay.
and 10 my time,
Okay.
and 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be having the second part of this workshop. And please, the handiwork is going to be very little, but mine has already started growing. I can see it, I can feel it. Yes, stringing back as well. So when we return, I would like you to have some olive oil at hand and your delicious dough on your countertops. We are going to be cutting them into sections, turning them into little loops or like wheels. That's the way I like them. I enjoy putting them on a string after they dry. And now we're going to bake them. And while we are baking, which is something like 20 to 25 minutes in my oven, it may change the first bake, I mean.
Something like that. Yeah.
I will open the floor to you all. I would love you to participate with your questions, with your ideas. And this second part of our workshop, I hope that we speak more on the future and on the future of food. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was wonderful, Defne. We are looking forward to the second part. We have some very lovely comments we received during your talk, so you may not have read them. We will be sending them to you separately, so you don't miss them. I hope everyone can join us in 1.5 hours. As Defne said, it is 1 p.m. New York time. Thank you.
Okay, so see you later.
Thank you, Aglaya.
Bye. See you later.